If you're hunting, hiking, backpacking, whatever, there are 10 essential items you should pack to avoid death. I'm going to give you a rundown in this video. In all seriousness, the 10 essentials are a time-tested collection of items that will help you out if you find yourself in an emergency situation. I always pack the 10 essentials if I'm going anywhere where it would take more than a few hours for me to be rescued. So if I have Wi-Fi and it's a public park, probably don't need the 10 essentials. But if I'm going somewhere where I'm not going to have cell service, and even if I could make a call, maybe it would take a couple hours for someone to find me, then I definitely want the 10 essentials with me. So the first essential is a first aid kit. I like to make my own first aid kits because typically when you buy one at the store, it's going to be missing some vital pieces. So a few things I have in here are things like a tourniquet, I have butterfly bandages, I have gauze pads, I have antihistamines because I tend to get stung by bees and I just want to make sure I don't die. In reality, the things that are going to hurt you in the backcountry are going to be cutting yourself on accident, burning yourself when you're cooking, and then maybe getting insect bites or stings. So those are the main things that you need to cover. But then if you're hunting, you also have to consider having weapons. When you're backpacking, you could have a hiking related injury. And so you just want to be ready for all of those things with your first aid kit. The next essential is your navigation system. And typically when I'm hunting, I'm just using the GPS maps on my phone with onX Hunt. However, I always bring a compass and I actually use it fairly regularly. Sometimes you're in an area where there aren't many landmarks or you're just trying to preserve your battery. And so it's helpful to understand which direction you need to go. And then you can just follow your compass as you're walking through the terrain. Also, if your phone dies, you're going to need something to give you direction. That's why you have a physical compass. I like to have a backup map as well. I may not be referencing it, but it may be a big picture. And if my phone died, then I could use my compass and map to get to the nearest highway or wherever I need to go. Okay, moving on. We've got a headlamp here. And a headlamp is very important. Sometimes on this list, you'll see just a flashlight. I think you want a headlamp for sure, because if you're in the dark and you're trying to travel or build a fire or do anything else, you just want it out of the way. So get a good headlamp, get one that's as bright as you can. This one is about 450 lumens, I believe, and that's been plenty bright for hiking out in the dark or blood trailing animals, but it doesn't hurt to go brighter. Also, with a headlamp, you want extra batteries. You'll put your headlamp in your pack, it will get stuck on or something, and you will need to change the batteries. So make sure always to bring both. The next essential is extra clothing. When you're out in the backcountry, there's three things that can kill you. There's lack of shelter, there's lack of water, and there's a lack of food. And extra clothing or insulation plays into the lack of shelter component. So you need to think about how cold it's going to get and how long you could survive with the clothing that you have. If you're hiking, you're probably going to be in, maybe a t-shirt. But then when you stop, it could get cold. And say you had to be out there even longer than you expected, maybe overnight, then you're going to want some extra insulation. Depending on the temperatures, it might just be a mid-layer, a hat, and gloves. You might want rain gear. If it's very cold, you might want a puffy jacket, or even if you're in a snowy environment, you might consider carrying a sleeping bag. Now, tied in with that is emergency shelter. And there's a couple different ways you can view this. Generally, it's something that's waterproof that you can put over you to just shed water and also hopefully cut the wind some. So depending on your environment, you can carry different things for emergency shelter. Maybe you just want to carry a small emergency blanket or even a poncho, something that you can throw on just to keep the rain off. You could call big black trash bags emergency shelter. Now, if you're going to be out for longer or the weather's more serious, you might bring a whole tarp. Whatever it is, it just has to be something that you're going to carry with you all the time. You can't say, oh, my tent's my emergency shelter, and then leave it at camp when you go on a day hike or a day hunt. All right, so essential number 6 is your water and your water purification system. So you want a water bottle. Typically, I carry at least 2 liters of water, sometimes even more. I can easily drink a gallon in a day when I'm out hiking around. What's as important as your water bottle is having some way to purify more water. So I've got the potable aqua tablets here. They are very simple to use and they're very lightweight, which I like. So I'm not bothered about having them in my backpack. You can also get a water filter or a SteriPen, whatever. You just need something that if you run out of water, you can get more. The 7th essential is sun protection. And this is one that I didn't place much stock in when I was younger. I just thought, whatever. If I get a little burned, that's not the end of the world. As I get older, it gets worse and worse. And the last time I was burned, it made me very dehydrated. It made me tired. And if I want to perform well when I'm hunting, I want to make sure that I don't get sunburned. So that could be sunscreen. It could be a long sleeve shirt. It could be a hat, whatever works for you. But just don't discount the fact that the sun can really damage your skin, right? And it's not just a skin cancer risk, it's also a performance risk where you get dehydrated and tired. All right, moving on. Here I've got my fire starters. Building a fire could be very important if you have to spend the night and you need some extra warmth, or for signaling to a rescuer. I always like to have fire starters on me. I don't use them that much, but in the case that there was an emergency, I want to know that I have a way to start fire. So I usually carry just a little lighter. I also carry some matches. I also like to carry dryer lint. I carry this all the time. It's super lightweight. You just collect it from your dryer and it's the best thing to start a fire. Even if it's wet outside, if you have enough of this stuff, you can at least hold a flame while you're putting tiny twigs on, and it's way easier than trying to find dry tinder in the woods. So dryer lint. Another thing that I've got in here is a little candle stub. So once again, just something to hold a flame while I'm building the fire around it. The next essential I've got is a knife. This is my hunting knife. A knife is useful for all sorts of things, as you can imagine. I also advocate for bringing a knife sharpener. It doesn't have to be this big, but if your knife gets dull, it's practically useless. So I recommend also bringing a knife sharpener. Okay, the final item is emergency food. Now, I put this at the very end because honestly, you can survive for something like 30 days without food, maybe more if you have more body fat. And so it's not really the top priority in an emergency situation. However, it's gonna be nice, right? Especially if you need to hike out of somewhere or you need to carry someone else, it's gonna be nice to have some energy. So these are just some things that I grabbed, some sardines. I always figure if I was really in an emergency, I could drink the olive oil and that would be a ton of calories. I don't know how that would do for my gut, but something I think about. And then I've just got, some other snacks that are high energy and low weight. So emergency food can be whatever you want it to be. You're just trying to have something a little extra in case you have to stay out longer than you expect. The last thing I'll say is adapt this kit to your needs. You may not need every single item on a day hunt or a day hike, but just think about if I was out there longer than I expected, or if it would take more than a few hours for someone to find me, what am I going to need to survive? All right, guys, is there anything else you think should be in this collection of items? Drop a comment and make sure to check out my other videos as well.